Hey folks, Evil DM here, and we're back with another episode of the Ghostbusters. Let's talk Ghostbusters, learn how to play Ghostbusters fine. Last time we talked about building characters and brownie points. This time we're going to talk about doing things. Doing things is real simple in this game, and I'm not going to be too complex right now. I'm just going to get down to the bare bones, basically the basic needs of how this works. So basically, like we spoke in the other videos, you have some traits, you have some talents. Each of them is assigned a certain number. The trait is assigned whatever number you put it at, and then you add 3 to it for your trait. So, for example, if your brains is... I'm sorry, let's go with moves. Your moves is 3, then you have fire proton, which is your talent or your specialty. That would be 6. So it's just always adding 3. That's how many dice you roll. When you roll dice, you'll, for whatever task the GM tells you to, or the Ghostmaster, you will roll that number of dice that's listed under the stat. So going back to the moves again, and you're shooting your proton pack, well, you're going to roll 6 dice because you have a specialty in blasting with the proton pack. Now, out of those 6 dice, one of them has to be the ghost die. Always has to be the ghost die, no matter what. If you even have a 1 in the stat, or the trait, I should say, you still have to roll just the ghost die. The ghost die is 1 through 5. The ghost itself is considered 0 because when you're rolling, you don't add the ghost. Usually something bad or wacky happens with the ghost, and it's always in favor of the Ghostmaster or the ghost itself, no matter what. It's never in favor of the players, ever. So when you're rolling, if you roll anything but the ghost, you just add it together like normal. But if you roll a ghost, you pretty much push the ghost to the side, add the rest of the dice together, and give your total. Now, when you're doing things in the game, you have a target number, much like the D20 systems we play today, like 5e, 3e, 4e, you have a target number, you roll to get to that. With this, you're taking 6-sided dice and you're doing the same concept. So there's a couple things that you can do for difficulties, and the book shows it, and Ghostbusters International gives a little more of a breakdown starting on page 14 of things that you can do. So let's start here. There's called very little difficulty, which is a roll target number between 1 and 3. That's like a ghost pretty much just chilling in the corner, and you blast them, no problem. You see them. That's moves. So you roll that. Then another one would be sleeping in your own bed after watching a horror movie at 3 a.m. So, that's going to be a cool roll to see how cool you are to get through the situation. Not that difficult. 1 to 3. You should be able to handle that pretty easily. Doubt you'll fail, but you never know. Then they have driving a car down a country road in the fog. That's very, kind of difficult. Not really, pretty easy. A little foggy. You drive a little slow. You're fine. That's a moves roll. You're fine. Now, some difficulties 4 to 8. Now, that ghost in the corner you saw before is now a slow floating ghost, and you have to kind of aim a little. So it's between 4 and 8. And the sleeping in your own bed at 3 a.m. after watching a horror movie becomes now you're in a hotel sleeping. And it's hard to sleep sometimes in a strange bed. So it's a little more difficult. The GM will assign 4 to 8. So it really depends. And then the driving situation turns into parallel parking a car. A little bit difficult for some people, pretty easy for others. So it's really a 4 to 8, depending on what the GM wants. Now, a good amount of difficulty is where it sits between 9 and 13. This is normally where most of the rolls in the game kind of end up, 9 and 13. Just a good amount of difficulty. And that's going to result back to our example before of blasting a moving ghost now at this point. So he's floating around, just floating around back and forth. And it's kind of hard to aim and shoot at him. So you're going to use your moves for that. Now back to the example of sleeping. Now it's considered like a noisy room. Maybe you're in a lobby and you're waiting for somebody, so you decide to take a nap because you're really tired, but it's like, a lot of noise going on, or it's a little bit of difficulty, a good amount of chance you're not going to be able to do it. So the driving situation turns into like driving in traffic. If you're downtown, everybody has a downtown, and it's usually that's difficult to travel in sometimes, like Manhattan, for example. It's hard to drive in. You never know. Now, lots of difficulty. 14 through 18 is kind of where you're going to be as well in the game. So I'm saying you're going to be going from good amount to lots of difficulty in the game, ranging from 9 to 18. That's going to be where most of these rolls are going to end up. And back to that ghost moving back and forth. Now this ghost is really agile, really quick, running all around on you, and you got to really do it and blast him. So the sleeping situation, another example. You went from that, hotel lobby trying to wait for your buddy or something, or in a bus station waiting for your buddy, to now you're trying to sleep in a hotel room and there's like a convention going on. Say you're at a gaming convention. You know how exciting it is at a gaming convention, and you're in a hotel and you hear people playing and stuff like that. It becomes a lot more difficult because you're excited and you want to go play. The parking example before, when you were parking or driving in Manhattan, now you're parallel parking a limo. That's very difficult. Not a lot of people can do that. Sure, some people can do it, but not a lot. And whole lots of difficulty, which you really won't see a lot of in the game, is now that ghost that's flying back and forth and getting all crazy is really far away. We're talking 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 feet away from you. So it's going to be a really difficult, whole lots of difficult roll there. And that sleeping situation, you went from that convention to now you're outside on the street. The cars are going by. People are talking. There's a lot of noise. It's cold. So we're talking about, their example was a New York street corner. Kind of difficult to fall asleep on the street at night, isn't it? It is. And the driving situation goes back to now you're driving on the freeway in rush hour. Imagine that. That is not a hell of a lot of ease to do. Sometimes in certain places it's a pain in the butt, I can tell you that. Finally, the last category is more difficult than you can imagine. That's like 30 plus. You're really never going to get into this category, maybe on a rare occasion as a player or a GM even using this, because the ghost example is now at this point you're pretty much blindfolded shooting that ghost that's like 100 yards away. Near impossible. Sleeping through a volcanic eruption. Not that you're ever going to do that, because it's almost impossible. And finally, the driving situation is winning the Indianapolis 500 while driving a Honda Civic. Not going to happen. So that's easily how you doing stuff. Now, there is the ghost die, which we're going to go back to now, which I talk to real quick. There's a couple situations where the ghost die does apply. If you're rolling your dice with the ghost die and the ghost doesn't come up, you just add it normal. Now, if you roll and you get less than the difficulty number, but don't roll a ghost, you just kind of get under the target number, nothing happens, you just fail. That's fine. Just like any other game. Now, here's where it starts to get a little bit fun. Let's say you roll the difficulty number and you do roll a ghost. So let's say you're attempting to eat a piece of paper and you roll less than the difficulty number and you don't roll a ghost. So you fail to eat the paper. You kind of just like, you gag it up, whatever. You don't do it. Next time you roll successfully, but you roll a ghost. So at this point, the GM can say, okay, as you're eating the paper, you're starting to chew it down. You realize at the last moment that was a very important piece of paper you had to sign for documents for the government or for the permit that you wanted to get through Walter Peck for in the game. Something silly like that. Or you get, as you're putting it into your mouth, you realize that was the bill that you were going to send off for that last ghost hunt that you were going to do. Something goofy like that. Now, if you fail the roll and get a ghost, that's when the bad stuff really starts to happen. So before, it was, if you got a ghost and pass, it's kind of like a goofy thing happens, something funny, makes everybody laugh. Nothing really too inconvenient, just like, crap type moment. But now, you fail, you got that ghost, that means shit hits the fan at this point, because it's always in the ghost and the ghost master's favor, no matter what. That's why on the ghost die, it's on the 6. So technically that die is only worth 1 through a 5 to you when you're rolling it, because you always ignore it when you have the ghost. You never add it. But you fail and you get that ghost, well, let's go back to that paper eating situation. Not only do you realize that it was an important document that needed to be signed to hand into the city so you can get your permit, but As you jam it into your face, you get a paper cut on the side of your lip, and you start to choke on it to the point that you can't breathe. Now someone has to do CPR on you as you're choking on this piece of paper because you're the dummy that tried to eat the paper. Things like that is what happens with the ghost. The ghost always works in favor of the ghost that's there, or the ghost, the spook, or the ghost master in general. So the only other thing that really applies here is opposed rolls, and that's pretty simple because you'll just do trait versus trait, brains versus brains, moves versus moves, and the higher number will always win. Just like in the D20 systems, any of the opposing system rolls, you're always going to do whichever one is higher will win the situation. That's how it pretty much works. As we get deeper into this system, there is a called system, Universal Health something or other. I can't think of it offhand. I apologize. It lapsed my memory, but it basically will determine how to figure out how to get these levels and what happens when you beat the levels. Because the higher you roll, the more that you'll get. So, and also a good point to remember: we did talk about brownie points in the last episode. So if you happen to get a situation where you only have 3 dice or 2 dice or 1 die, and you want to do something, and I'm like, hey, you got to roll a 14, and you're like, oh crap, I only have 1 die. Oh crap, I only have 2 die. Oh crap, I only have 3 die, and that's going to barely get me over that 14 or 15. I'm going to spend some brownie points. So each brownie point's worth a die before you roll. So you can't do it after you roll. You have to do it before and declare as many as you want. You can declare 20 if you want. Silly, but you can. Some games I've seen the Ghostmaster allow you to spend a certain amount of brownie points to re-roll the entire roll, like 3, 4, 5. It really depends on the Ghostmaster. I've done it. You roll 2 die. You spend 2 brownie points. You can re-roll the entire roll, but you can only do that a certain amount of times a session. Also, I've seen them do it so that some people at conventions have done it so that when you roll the dice and you fail, the GM will let you spend brownie points to add more dice to it, but it's double the amount. So instead of 2 brownie points equaling 2 dice, that only would equal 1 die. See what I mean? So those are just some ideas what you can do with the ghost die and the dice rolling and the opposing system. But we'll get into more detail how the system actually works when you get further into these videos. So we'll talk about getting hurt and getting better another time. So that's a little more of a topic in itself, along with the higher rolls and everything like that. So if you have any questions, just keep them coming. Like the videos and comment below. Subscribe if you have not, and I will see you next time. Later, folks.